Good afternoon, Shoptalk, universities and campuses, COVID, and our industry's response. My name is Justin, and I'll be assisting Casey Jones, CAPP, in moderating today's Shoptalk. As a reminder, today's Shoptalk is being recorded. We will make the recording available within 48 hours for you to use and share. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I know that these are some unprecedented times that we are trying and that we are all here today. Our community has come together to share best practices to keep everyone safe. Before we get started, IPMI Board Chairman Dave Honorato would like to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Justin. I would also like to thank IPMI staff and Casey Jones for coordinating and making today's Shop Talk a reality. To reiterate on Justin's comment, these are some unprecedented times and not business as usual for all of us. But by working together, communicating, sharing our concerns and issues, and how we are dealing with today's new norm, we will get through this crisis together. IPMI is committed in doing its part by providing and sharing information with our memberships and providing forums for you to communicate with us and to our peers. Again, I'd like to thank staff for organizing today's Shop Talk and for your participation, especially during these trying times. Please stay safe and healthy.
All right. Dave, thank you very much for those inspirational words. Before we start, just a few housekeeping rules for today. If you have a webcam and are you comfortable doing so, please turn your camera on. IPMI wants everyone to feel engaged and participate, and we want to see your smiling faces. We want this virtual Shop Talk to be just like our regular Shop Talks, face-to-face and sharing our ideas. As a reminder, all participants' lines are muted. We invite everyone to participate. To do so, we ask that everyone to raise their hands. We will call on you one at a time. To raise your hands, open up the participant window. It will appear on your right side of the screen, and at the bottom of the menu, there is a raise hands. Phone participants, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and we will recognize you. Once recognized, your phone will be unmuted and allowed to join the conversation. You may also type your question into the chat. Click the chat icon and then type your question or comment and then click send. I will read those to the group as they come in. And now I'm going to turn the audience over to Casey.
Great, thanks Justin and thanks Dave. Welcome everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you today. And before we get going, just a couple of things I wanted to share. I wanted to give a special thanks to Brett Wood and Mark Santos for helping develop a list of questions that we're going to base our Shop Talk on today. Fantastic feedback. Mike Este from the city of Seattle also pitched in a great amount. And I also want to give a special thanks to Sean and Rachel, Cindy, Justin, Kim, Kathleen, Tina, the entire IPMI staff. Folks on the line may not understand this or appreciate it, but the work that this team is doing on behalf of the board and with the board of directors of the IPMI is just outstanding, trying to connect us. And as I think about, the essence of IPMI, it really is creating community so that we can come together and it's often when, things are a little easier, but certainly when we have a challenge in front of us like this, there's nothing better than for us to be together and to work together, share ideas, and that's really what we want to do today. So that's what I wanted to share in the beginning with all of you. I'm really touched. This is our second webinar of the day. This is not, as easy maybe as a in-person Shop Talk, and I know that we'll get through it. So it may be a little slower. Thanks for your patience. We're monitoring as you raise your hands, monitoring as you submit a chat. So we're going to try to get to everyone that we can today, everyone that has something to share, a question to ask. But this won't be our last time. Again, IPMI is family and it is community. So I know that the staff and the board is here to make any adjustment that we can make to ensure that we've got open lines of communication, that we're working together to face this challenge. So appreciate that you're all on today. So we have a couple of topic areas that we're going to try to focus on here as we move ahead, but we can take this just like a regular shop talk. We can take this in whatever direction makes the most sense to all of you. And again, most people are muted right now, or maybe everyone is muted right now. But if for whatever reason you come off mute, and I know that you're with your families and you've got that in the background, and that's great. But if you wouldn't mind muting, if you come unmuted and you're done with your comments or questions, that would be fantastic. So let's begin with a conversation about people management. The people are our greatest assets, and I want to know how you're managing your staff right now. Many of us have a combination of field staff and operations staff. Lots of folks are working from home. There may be orders, whether it's in the city or state, that are asking requiring people to shelter at home. So let's talk about how you're staffing. Let's talk about some of your strategies for communication, how you're staying connected with people that are, maybe the most remote, whether that's by function or whether they're at home now. Let's talk about how we're using tools to communicate with folks. So on the topic of people management, and it looks like Jessica raised her hand. Is that right, Jessica? Oh, okay. Sounds good. Well, Jessica, you now know how to raise your hand and lower it, so thanks for that. But who's got something to share as far as people management goes and communicating with frontline staff?
Donna Holteen had something, and she was going to start typing, but I thought I might tag her since I knew she was ready.
Fantastic. Donna Holteen, can we put you on the spot?
She's still muted, so give her a hot second.
Okay, that's a lie. I was just trying to figure out how to raise my hand.
Oh.
I wasn't ready. But so communication, actually, I started out in the transit shop talk earlier today and then had to leave. But it made me, I listened to some of the first questions, and it made me realize that I'm not communicating with our field staff. And I don't know, Quiz, my counterpart, is on here as well, and I don't know if he's had much communication with field staff. Honestly, this last 2 weeks has made me feel a little bit irrelevant, because when these students aren't on campus and staff's not on campus, or staff is pretty much parking wherever they need to, we're really only restricting reserve stalls. All of the money that should be coming in for permits, now I'm grappling with giving that money back. And so that's been just kind of a real eye-opener for me. Our administrative staff meets every day online. We have Zoom meetings and Skype meetings, and I just miss them so much, and you just don't realize how much you interact with them day to day. So we're doing that every day. But it just reminds me that I need to include these officers, and the officers and our other field folks, a lot of them don't have technology at home to do this. So I need to figure out how I'm going to do that.
Thanks, Donna. Let me ask you, just keep you on the spot for half a second. And if you wouldn't mind describing what that operation looks like for you. Do you have people in the field still or not? Your office staff, if the administrative folks are meeting online, talk about what presence that you have on campus right now. And let's stay on the topic of communication, but to get a sense of what your operation looks like right now might be helpful.
Right. I don't have any staff on campus right now. I've got people on call, if somebody is in a reserve stall, because, administrators are all on campus, and or many of them are on campus. And so we are guarding reserve stalls. we've not gotten any phone calls. You know, I have a campus that's normally closed, so I have people in booths that guard the entrances to campus. They are not there. My field folks are not there. We have a transit provider that we work with, and the transit system is still up and running, but and Aaron Quisenberry sort of runs that remotely. I mean, everybody who could take a laptop home is taking a laptop home, and we are doing a lot of work because we're getting a lot of phone calls and emails, especially about refunds and stopping payroll deduction. But there is no presence right now on campus.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Debbie Hoffman raised your hand. Go ahead, Debbie.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We sure can, thanks.
Great. So our university has taken the stance that all classes are online, but the university is open. There was no push to have students not return if they chose to until yesterday was the first time our university decided to encourage students to go home if they were able, because yesterday our city had an order to shelter in place that would be effective immediately and not later than 9 p.m. tonight. Because we have students on campus, our services are considered essential to help support them. So we have any of our about 200 employees, budgeted employees that can work from home are doing that mostly. We have about 5 people in our office here where we would normally have closer to 30 in our location. Those are generally high-level administrators that are here. We have our officer team, which is about 50, are coming in shifts so that if there's exposure that only one shift could potentially have that exposure. We have time clocks where they have biometric scanning, which we've explored trying to turn off and we're not able to get that turned off. So there's wipes to wipe between. There's 6-foot distancing as they're clocking in. They're still getting briefings in a room large enough to allow them to maintain adequate distancing. And we are not citing except for in extreme violations and doing all that we can to just act in an ambassador role and capacity on our campus.
Thanks, Debbie. Let's circle back to communication. Do you mind sharing with us how your communications are functioning across all of those employee groups? And anything that you're doing that's different or would be helpful for everyone to know?
Sure. Those groups are coming in the shifts that we have 3 shifts throughout the day, and they're getting their briefings in that larger room where they can be distanced. They also have radio communications, and of course all the equipment is getting wiped down before and after anyone's touching and using them. And we have certainly email that we are using to communicate throughout our organization. We have an intranet page where we keep posting updates there as well. From a perspective, we are meeting primarily with Zoom, except for people who are here in our suite where we can come to a conference room and then meet with that distancing between us.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
You're welcome.
Anyone else want to talk about communication? And I think it was Donna, talking about staff that don't have the sort of technology necessarily, but really need as much to stay connected, right? So Brian has raised his hand. Brian Shaw from Stanford. Hi, Brian.
Can you all hear me okay?
We sure can.
Yeah. Great. We've been going now into week 2 of this. We were fortunate that we set up ourselves to be a remote operation because of another issue. We moved off campus about 9 months ago. We had never functioned 100% remote. When this issue started to come to light about 3 weeks ago, I instructed all my team members to start bringing their laptops home with them. And these are folks who, a lot of them never did that before. And then we started to practice, work at least 1 day a week remotely. So when the order came that we needed to work remotely for the entire division, we were ready, and we were ready to go. We only had one person who didn't have internet at home, which most people just take for granted. But we agreed to help fund that for them. That is something the university does in general. And so that's something that we will take care of once everybody's back to normal. We have set up a microsite, is what we call it, on our website about COVID. There is a banner on the front of our main webpage, transportation.stanford.edu, that links to that COVID microsite. It is updated basically daily because every day there is some new issue or wrinkle we're having to deal with. Parking has been made free for the most part. The hospital area still has some enforcement because they're using a number of their facilities as testing or screening centers. And we have allowed their staff to use our parking facilities for their ability to park and get to work. And that's why we made our parking free, was to really help the hospitals. There is a university-wide email process that goes out every day, and we are typically a piece of that that goes out. There is a policy committee the university has established for any changes to normal practices. They review anything we bring forward and they approve it. And then the communications are also reviewed and approved, and then they go out through those channels that I described. Slack for us has been a godsend. We started using Slack almost a year ago, about May of last year, and our use of that has increased tremendously. You can customize who you send messages to, you can set up different groups, and with a lot of changes that are going on and needs to get feedback, Slack for us has been almost invaluable. That if trying to do this by email or some other means, it just would have been harder and slower and more difficult. So Slack for us has really become the lifeline. It's become, I would say, the water cooler and the coffee break room for us. People use it for business, which is great, but they're also posting, things to help with morale and helpful tips and all that sort of stuff we all take for granted when everybody's kind of in the same space most of the time. So if you don't have Slack, this would be a good time to be thinking about it. I think that for us has been a very critical tool. And I don't think you can over communicate. I think that people have a million questions. And so getting stuff out there, keeping it up to date, don't be bothering people with irrelevant things. But in our world, going from paid parking to free parking, changing bus routes and frequencies, and then they have questions about our TDM programs. It's just important to get that information out there to everybody. So I would say the busiest people in my world are my communications people. They are overworked. They are burning out. One of them took today off as a example, because every day they're having to develop these new messages and making sure that they're being vetted properly and all that good stuff. So communications is the coin of the realm at Stanford, as I like to say, even under these conditions.
Thanks, Brian. Real quick, can you explain what Slack is for those people who aren't familiar with it? And two, you talked a lot about communication, and it feels to me like some of that is directed at your team, right? People that are executing the work, and and the other part is consumers, public facing, et cetera. So can you talk a little bit more detail, cleaving those two things?
Sure.
And maybe end with communication for your team, for the folks that are doing this heavy lifting.
So Slack is a enterprise software that is sent, I guess it would be like Super Chat. It's integrated with all sorts of communication tools like Zoom and your emails, things like Outlook, but it allows you to set up different pods of people or just send messages individual. It allows people to just send an emoji as a response. It's a tool that a lot of the tech companies have been using, and we got it, I'd say, a little bit late, but we do have it. And it's a way to not need to have people in your phone. You can just type their name and they're there, and it provides a mobile app as well. It's a good tool. I look it up, just go to Google Slack and you can learn more about it from that that process. So for us, I think using email is still unfortunately part of the process. I don't like email because I don't know if someone's seen it and all of that, but it's still, in order to get the word out to our 20,000 customers, it is the best way of doing that for now. This particularly because we don't have anybody on site who can post signs very easily. So I have to have this other means of getting the word out, and that is email, but also having it go through official channels. The Stanford report is an email that goes out to everybody 5 days a week. It's sort of like the newspaper of Stanford that we also use, as well as the hospital has their own channels that we tap into for their particular people. So there's a whole enterprise on communicating with these thousands of people that I have folks dedicated to, and they're tapped into the university communications enterprise and all of that. But I'd say internally, it's still sort of maintaining some semblance of order. So I still have my one-on-ones with people. They're still having theirs, calling people if you need to. But the Slack has really become, I would say, like the glue amongst the division, because it's ours and it's not inundated by other people, so that you can send messages and people can see them and they're not being distracted with other things coming in through that way. So I would say for us, we're very thankful. I pushed it, folks are like, well, it's another thing we have to do, but I'm really glad that we've gone ahead and made Slack part of our process.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate all that. So
Sure.
Staying on the topic of people management, let's talk a bit about the sort of, remedial things that you're doing right now to protect your staffs. Whether that's, we heard earlier in the municipal call about changes in shift work, and one city created 2 break rooms so that they weren't putting people at higher risk. Let's talk about those things. Let's talk about the strategies that you're using when you have staff on site or field staff. What things are you doing to protect them? Are you doing any temperature screening of essential personnel? Are you finding yourself working with people who may be ill, staff members who may be ill, to keep them home? Anything along the line that you'd like to talk about as far as protecting your staff when they do have to come to work? Anybody want to take a stab at that? Quiz. Thank you. Fire away, sir.
Yeah, so real quick, and this is not from a parking side of things, but I want to give everybody from the transit perspective. Obviously, trying to keep the buses as clean as possible, disinfected as much as possible, 1 time, 2 times, nightly. How does that all look? I mentioned on the earlier call that the way the bus systems run in Lawrence is that we have city routes and then we have KU routes, and then collectively they just all work together to form this one big system. But because KU is no longer in session physically on the campus, we have deleted basically 1/3 to 40% of the overall routes in Lawrence. So we've got, we're getting questions regarding what are we doing with those drivers. Some of the drivers right now, we're being able to double them up on buses where one is driving, one is cleaning. So that might be an example where roles are changing as far as the staff goes. We might have there's how we're communicating with Douglas County and their staff with disinfectants and getting those machines put on the buses. There's a whole slew of new things that are popping up with our drivers. What are we doing long term? Communicating with them. Should I come in tomorrow? What if I've notified the transit agency that I think I'm showing symptoms of COVID-19 and I put myself in self-quarantine? Now we're notifying folks at the county level. So there's all sorts of different kind of communication things that we're looking at there. And I had a couple other, they'll come up to me here in a second, but those are just a few from a transit side of things.
Great. Thanks, Quiz. Anyone else want to share their tactics for keeping employees, staff safe? Anything?
If you're on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand or open up the participants menu and click raise hand.
This isn't a shy group, so let's share, okay?
Hey, Casey, it's Rachel from IPMI. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you all. Curious, a lot of the academic community has really sophisticated mobile apps, like even elementary school kids, right, have Schoology and learning boards and things like that. Have you had any luck using those custom apps for your messaging? As Brian mentioned, the communications are so important, as opposed to email, which sometimes has deliverability issues.
All right.
All right.
Well, maybe we can circle back to that one. So let me ask you, some of you might still be doing some level of enforcement. First of all, I'd like to hear if that's the case, or if you've just opened everything up. Let's talk a bit about that, what you're doing as far as managing either parking facilities or lots, or if you have on-street spaces. And then if you're issuing any kinds of citations, we got a kind of a mixed bag from the municipal world, and maybe go beyond that. If you are doing some level of enforcement or management, if you will, why is it that you're doing that? What's the basis for doing that? If you could share that. And then I guess one last question in that to get you thinking. If you're issuing citations and somebody, is unhappy about that, what's the communication that you are sharing with them at that particular moment that they've got a citation? Anyone want to share about citations, enforcement, any restrictions that you're continuing to do and how you're communicating that?
Casey, it just came through chat. Erica is... they use Rave for their campus-wide communication if we have an urgent notice. Otherwise, it's just email for us.
Okay, great. Thanks, Erica. Appreciate that. A lot of schools have Rave or a Rave-like distribution system that's used typically for critical incidents on campus. So good to know.
It looks like we have Millie Kinney.
Hi, Millie. You're on the line. Go ahead.
Thanks. So I just wanted to answer the question about enforcement. At Santa Clara University, we're requiring that folks come in through the main gate and get a parking pass, and we're identifying folks on the parking pass using their staff ID or their student ID if they're there. And the reason we're doing that, excuse me, is because we get a lot of people roaming through our campus that I'm sure are well aware that there's not a lot of people there, and we're concerned about the cars that had been left behind, or even people attempting to get into buildings or whatnot. Anyways, it's our way of trying to identify who's there and that they belong there. So that's one of the things we're doing. We're currently, we haven't done it yet, but we have a plan in place to block off entrances to campus, driving entrances anyways, to the campus itself or any of the satellite parking lots, so that we can better control, who's in those areas. We're a little bit short-staffed, and really sort of going around in person to patrol these areas to make sure that cars aren't being broken into or other things aren't happening, like people driving their cars in there and living in a parking lot. These are the things we're doing to sort of manage that. So I don't know if that answers the question or if there's something else that I can answer.
Hey, Casey, Debbie Hoffman wants to chime into the question about the enforcement too.
Okay, go ahead, Debbie, and I think Paul was. We'll take Paul next.
Okay.
Debbie, the floor is yours. Well,
Okay,
we'll come back.
from Summit.
Oh, you might need to start over, Debbie.
Can you hear me now?
We sure can. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. And to honor Rachel's request, I'm with Texas A&M University. I mentioned earlier that we do have enforcement officers. We're deploying them without ticket writers. We have ticket writers with the officers in charge that are supervising the shift. And they're in an ambassador role, but we do have a few areas that have been problematic where there's small lots where essential staff that are managing dining facilities, for example, or having trouble parking near residence areas where we've really gone out of our way to communicate directly to the offenders and through, for example, our commandant's office that's near the Corps of Cadets park residential areas, so that we reached to the commandants and said, we're having a problem in this isolated spot. We reached the people by email individually when they were parking in an area where staff should have been restricted. So we are working very hard to not write tickets and to communicate a much more relaxed parking stance rather than our typical academic year parking rules. We are in what we call break parking, which allows a lot more freedom and mobility.
Thanks, Debbie. So sounds like you still have quite a campus population. Do you anticipate that that'll continue, or do you feel like those on-campus residents or whoever the Corps, are they going to, do you anticipate that they'll be sent home at some point or no?
The Corps has no formal activities. They're very emphatic that that's the case, but there are some of them here. We have about 20% of our on-campus residents on campus right now. And so it is a very, very quiet campus, but because of the university stance that we're open, there's maybe more essential staff than we would normally see in an emergency situation. So the dining halls can continue to produce food to go. They're not able to open the dining rooms. And so that custodial can continue to clean all the dorms because they haven't consolidated any of the people who are on campus to a certain few dorms or residence halls, because many people who have already indicated they will cancel their contract have not been here to remove their belongings.
Okay, great. Paul, I wanted to circle back to you. Did you have a comment you wanted to share? No? Okay.
No,
Right.
sorry. I just joined late and just listening in now.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, thank you. Glad you're here. Washington State University, I see T. Lensing, or maybe that's Washington State, WSU. You were planning to reduce your daily rates, and now the state has issued a stay-at-home order. Do I have the right state? And did you want to share any more about that? You were going down one path, and it sounds like this is an adjustment. So are you doing something different now?
If you're calling in, you can press *6 to unmute your phone. Washington State is correct. So
anything to share?
Nothing to add. Nothing.
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
We'll go to Tracy next.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Tracy? Okay. Well, then we'll go to Brian Shaw.
Thanks, Justin. I'm with Stanford. I forgot to say that last time. I apologize. So we are really down on our campus population. We've got maybe 10% of the undergrads we normally would have. We have a number of students who couldn't go home. They're from foreign countries, or Stanford is their home. And so we are still having a sort of scattered shot of undergrads. Most of our graduate students have stayed on campus. So we've had to be kind of strategic about what we do and how we do it in light of that. But our public safety staff is needing as many bodies as they can to help secure the campus. If any of you have been to Stanford, it's a pretty big place. It covers a pretty big footprint of acreage. And on a normal day, there's a lot of people at Stanford, and they can kind of act as eyes on the street. That is not the case now. So public safety has been challenged to provide that level of oversight. And so our parking enforcement staff, which are employed through public safety, have essentially been reassigned to act in that security capacity. And so they are not doing enforcement except in the event of a safety-related problem, such as a fire lane, fire hydrant, handicapped, or in obvious areas where a car is potentially causing a problem. They'll deal with those, but typically they're now out there trying to keep people from doing things we don't want them to do, and to act as in a security capacity for our testing center, which is getting ready to be activated tomorrow morning with our hospitals. They're actually using one of our larger parking lots as a COVID-19 testing location, so they're acting in a security capacity. So even if I still wanted to do enforcement, our folks that do that work are needed for arguably today a higher and better purpose than writing parking tickets. So we're kind of letting our hospitals really provide us with our marching orders at this point, because they are really on the front lines of dealing with this situation with the virus. And so their needs are really taking precedent, which isn't always the case at Stanford, but it is right now. And so what they need, we will do, and how we can support them is really our priority today. And so that's a much different position for us to be in, but we're happy to help them in any way that we possibly can. And that includes using a parking lot as a testing center and using our people for security and all that sort of thing. So we've also changed some things on our buses. We took a cue from our county transit agency, VTA. They have gone to rear boarding only and not charging fares. Of course, we never charge fares at Stanford, but they've gone to rear boarding only, which is a way to help protect the drivers. So the drivers are only using their front door in the event they need to load or unload a disabled person, because that's where the ramp and the lifts are located. But other than that, we're asking and basically requiring people to board and alight the buses from the back door to keep the drivers from being as exposed as we possibly can. Because of the hospitals, we are still running, I would say, close to 75% of our normal service, and have just focused on reducing service that is focused on our undergraduate students. But a lot of our service is dedicated to the commuters coming to work, and a lot of them are still working at the hospital. So we've had to be pretty strategic about how we continue to have bus service, but also try not to expose our drivers and try to maintain social distancing. That is not an easy task on transit. We are cleaning our buses once a day. That's sort of the apt recommended practice. We haven't gone to what the folks in Lawrence described. I like that idea. I may pose that as something we could do for some of our drivers that we're not needing to use as driving buses in. So I think at Stanford, we're probably ahead of where a lot of you are going to probably end up being very, very soon. So if you need some advice, happy to provide that. We haven't figured this out. We're doing the best we can. But since we've been there and we've sort of troubleshooted this a little bit, I might give you some insight if I can be able to do that.
Thanks, Brian. Tracy from the University of Central Florida. Tracy, did we get you? I think.
Tracy, go ahead. Looks like her mic's not working. What she posted is the University of Central Florida is citing for specialty spaces only. Working with.
I'll take the rest of that, Justin, no problem. Working with housing, and they're waiving citations as they are required to move out starting today. Okay. I think home and life is happening at Justin's house right now, so that's okay. We'll roll with it. Alejandro, you had something to share. Go ahead, Alejandro. Well, let's shift gears a little bit here, and maybe we can catch up with these folks. We don't want to leave anyone out, but let's talk a bit about permit management. And, so I think many of you are in a position right now where you're sort of having to deal with some kind of refund. Let's talk about how that's going. And another question came in about, future permit sales. So let's take both of those things. Anyone wants to share how they're dealing with permit refunds or permit suspensions now, and then let's shift gears to how people are planning for the next permit cycle beyond the spring term. Maybe that's summer, or maybe that's the next one. So how are we dealing with refunds, folks?
Oh, I got my mic working now, Trace.
Oh, fantastic, Alejandro. Go ahead. You're on.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Well, I just want to give you a little brief about another part of the world. And this is horrible up here.
Where are you at, Alejandro?
Colombia. In Colombia. Okay, Bogota, the capital. But it doesn't matter the city. The whole country is shut out. We are closed. Everybody's closed. The only thing that is open is banks, supermarkets, and drugstores. That's it. Everything else is closed. Nobody could be in the streets, and this is going to go all the way to April 13. So, and if you go into a supermarket and you happen to be on a parking lot that you have to pay, well, you have to pay whatever is there. We're not lowering the rates or anything like that. Is $1.50 an hour, so that's what they're paying, and that's mandatory by the mayor. But I just wanted to share with you, we're just locked out at home, doing absolutely errands at home, cleaning and all that stuff. But hopefully by the time we get back to business, there's still business up there. I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Oh, I'm glad you're here, and we're thinking of you for sure. So back to permits. Let's talk about how people are managing permits. Anyone? Tracy's mic is not working, but she's sharing that the University of Central Florida are offering refunds on a case-by-case basis for spring permits. They're currently not selling summer permits at this time, as summer A, C, and D have been moved to online. So I'm assuming what that means is all classes are moving to online. Biggest summer B, which must be the B sale, has not yet been decided as to whether they will be online or face-to-face. I see. So the biggest term, summer term B, it's not been decided whether that will be online or face-to-face. So sorry your mic's not working, Tracy, but you're still with us, so I appreciate that. Anyone else on permits? Anyone else that hasn't shared? We'd love to hear from everyone.
JL Stone, you're up to go.
Josh, fire away, my friend.
Can everybody hear me?
Of course we can. Good to hear your voice.
This is awesome. I'm learning more about Zoom and Google Hangouts in the last 3 days than anybody. But so at Virginia Commonwealth University, we're issuing refunds to everybody, which has been, well, it's still the challenge because I still don't really know how we're going to do it exactly. Of course, we don't integrate with the university's banner system, which I liked up until this time period. But so we're having to figure out the best way for students to give them their refunds back that does not take everybody a manual process. So we're still working on that. We already had a refund policy in place where they would get back any remaining months. So we're going to give them back April and May. And then on the faculty staff side, fortunately, a huge chunk of our employees do payroll deduction. So we're just going to stop their payroll deduction here, potentially for at least 3 pay periods. No denying this is a huge financial hit to us, but as I've told everybody, we'll get through it. It's a new experience for everybody, but the big thing for us was we announced it early that we would give refunds, which is kind of quieted down the storm of emails. We still have a couple hundred that seem to flow in every day, but we got 500 our first day. So So we're still working on a process, but we're going to give everybody a refund. We have no right to keep that money in our eyes.
Thanks for sharing, Josh. Let's take Ross. We haven't heard from Ross, and then we'll take Donna and then Brian Shaw. So Ross, University of Minnesota.
Good to see everybody. So we have a situation where a couple weeks back we went to online learning right after spring break. And so for the most part, everyone should be working remotely now except for essential staff, which is very, very few folks. Many of you may know most of our system is gated, and therefore what we've said is contracts can be canceled for staff. However, you'll go to the bottom of the waiting list. So most people will probably want to not cancel their contract in that case. For student contracts, we're just taking those on request. We have a high population of students who live very close to campus in non-residential housing, and they use our parking as their parking. So that's the core reason we're not canceling every student's contract. But that one's still being discussed at the highest levels. And then again, with our, one of the reasons we're staying in a paid parking mode is because we have a significant hospital population, which are not directly university employees. And so they're using a fair amount of our parking. So it's different. We are anticipating our governor issuing the whatever you want to call it, safer at home, type of an order here in the next few days. I believe that our leadership hopes that what we've set up will be able to remain the same, and they don't, as I'm understanding it, not looking to actually close campus officially because of all of the implications that would mean. So that's kind of our situation here up at Minnesota.
Thanks, Ross. Donna, go ahead and share.
So the city of Lawrence, or our county, Douglas County, has put out a isolation order until April 23rd. So we're all on lockdown until April 23rd. I'm waiting for permission or guidance from my leadership to be able to give a refund. Our refund policy, normally our permits have already run out of any refund potential by this date, but that's assuming physical classes are still in session. And since they're not, and these students are online and they're all being asked to move out now, I think we'll still have a population of international students and students that cannot move out, but they'll consolidate them into a few residence halls. So I want to give money back. We're moving forward with trying to figure out how to do that. I'm still waiting for administration to make that decision. From what I understand, they've not even figured out whether they're giving money back for housing, which I know is way bigger dollars than my dollars, but we're getting trickles of emails. Not a lot of students are thinking about it, but several a day. And then staff, and especially staff who are essential, who are, some of them are afraid, they're not happy that they are reporting to work. They know that we're not enforcing the staff lots, and so I would like to suspend their payroll deduction as well. So I just wonder if there's any way to take a poll of the people that are here today of what schools are providing refunds and stopping payroll deduction.
So I think, Donna, we are able to do a poll. Justin, we might have to come back to this after we figure it out. Okay. So, okay, but I love the question, and I would love to be able to respond to you. Give us a few minutes to see if we can do that. So what we'll do, we'll take Deborah from San Diego. We'll take Deborah next, and then Brian, and then we've got a few comments in the chat box that I'll read off, and that'll buy us a little bit of time to see if we can't pull off a poll. Does that sound okay, Debbie? Or does that sound okay to you, Donna? Okay, thank you. So Deborah, go ahead, and then Brian. We'll take that in that order, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
All right, great. So I'm with San Diego Community College District, and we're, a little bit different in that our full semester parking permit price is only $40. And then our all of our financial aid students get a discount to $25 a semester. And we charge the same thing, and it is a low fee, but we charge the same thing for our 4, 6, and 8-week classes as we do for our 16-week classes. So we went, we had students stay home starting the 16th of March, which was the 7th week of our semester. So I was really interested to hear what people are doing about refunds too. I don't see how I could afford to refund. I don't know how it would meet payroll if we refunded all of our spring parking permit sales. And my recommendation to administration was that we don't, because we're already 7 weeks in. It's the same price we charge anybody that took a 6-week class. So why would we? I know how that sounds under the circumstances, but I'm just really worried about meeting expenses. So that's where we are. I haven't had any pushback yet, but I am getting a lot of requests from students for refund. Obviously, you know, they're going to be online for the rest of the semester and maybe into fall. Who knows how long this is going to go on. So
thanks, Deborah. Okay, so I think we have it figured out how we can do a poll. So I want to make sure that we get this question right. Donna, your question was, you know, how many institutions are issuing refunds? If that's right.
Yes, to students.
Okay, sounds good. So right now, with a show of hands, so go to your the participant chat box, raise your hand if your institution is issuing any kind of student refunds.
If you're calling in, you can press *9 to raise your hands.
And I think, are we going to just count this manual count? Okay. So we have right now on the call 84 participants, and of course there are a handful of IPMI staff and others. So we'll have to do a little quick calculation.
We have 12 so far, 13. Tracy's asking to repeat the question.
The question is, how many of you are issuing any kind of student refund, permit refund? So it's clearly not the majority of the people on the call, even subtracting out staff. We're getting some other ones come in now. We've had quite a few, while we're doing this, stay with it. If you haven't voted, please do vote. But I'm going to just read off a handful of the comments. University of Central Florida, I already read that one, sorry, disregard. University of Alabama at Birmingham University System is contemplating how to handle refunds. Likely we will prorate based. Those eligible for refund will be those who held active permits on March 1. Brian Shaw from Stanford, sorry I didn't get to you, pal. No free refunds for March. Requesting permit holders to cancel permits for April. We go in a month at a time with our virtual permit system. It sounds like based from there. Debbie Hoffman from TAMU. We usually allow prorated refunds through mid-July and are continuing to do so. We added a component for virtual returns whereby customers can email us a photo of their permit and a second that shows it cut in at least 5 pieces, not 6. That's good. It has been so popular, we are already planning to continue virtual returns as a component of our usual offering. As of today at 1 p.m., we have had 1,106 permits returned since the 9th of March. Georgia Southern is issuing a $25 refund for students who purchased spring 2020 permit, 1,500 students, no faculty and staff. Wayne State University Detroit is refunding balance remaining on semester permits. Employee permit payroll deduction will not occur while we are on statewide shelter-at-home orders until April 13th. We have not received direction yet to whether or not spring-summer semester classes will continue. Let's see. Anything else? Santa Clara University and Millie is refunding any permits purchased in the last 30 days. No decisions made in regard to refunds otherwise. Millie would like to see a credit, at least offer a credit for students as they return. Let's see. So did we get everything? Everyone counted on that. So I don't know if do we have any results on that? Anything for Donna's question?
We counted, we had 15, so very few of the participants on here.
Okay. So definitely less than half. I'm just spitballing here a little bit, Donna, but maybe a third of the people that are on this call raised their hand and indicated that they were offering any kind of refund. Okay. Anything else on that? That's a great topic, and it feels to me like it's continuing to move. There's a couple more chats we wanted to share. Cornell University is following normal refund rules, so prepaid until March 30th, stop payroll if the permit holder returns their permit. No guidance yet on stopping payroll installments for staff permits. UTA is prorating permits, permit refunds. Let's see, anything else here? Waiting for guidance on the university. No refunds yet for the University of Kansas Medical Center. No refunds. We're just charging students for April or May based on SIP order from county. So, okay, very good. Let's see.
Hey, Casey, we'll have time for one more response after this question.
One more response. Let me ask this question, folks, and I'd be really interested. You're going to hear just in 1/2 second some of the things that are planned, that IPMI is planning here. But what are your thoughts on how IPMI can continue to have the greatest impact or be the most helpful as we move forward? So anyone have any ideas about what IPMI can be doing?
And you can type your response in the chat, or you can unmute you so that way you can do your Armand. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, everybody. So this is actually unique because my fiance here runs parking administration at the University of Maryland, and I run parking operations at the University of Maryland. So we're one of those parking couples. And she absolutely wanted to weigh in on that question. So I'll introduce her, even though it's under my name at the moment.
And they both earned their CAPPs too.
Yeah, we did.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Long, and I just wanted to suggest at the University of Maryland, all of our non-telework eligible employees are currently being paid to stay home. And so the university has asked that whether they are a contract employee, a part-time employee, anyone, they've deemed that our services are not essential during this time. And so we have a lot of employees that are at home who can't do their regular job. So if IPMI could help us support those individuals by providing training that may be geared to those individuals who are looking for things to do. I know for our staff, one of the most stressful things that our supervisors are facing are coming up with projects for those individuals who need something to do while they're at home, who cannot do their normal job because they are not the type of person who is tied to a computer. It's our enforcement officers, it's our bus drivers, our cashiers, our telephone staff.
Great, thank you so much for that. We had some other comments here, and I'm reading from the chat here. I think that's really interesting. And I just lost it, sorry. I'm stumbling around here.
I have it here too, Casey.
Yeah, best practices for refunds, right? Maybe there's a survey that can go out to ask participants along the lines that Donna asked, who's doing what? So, doing something that leadership can take a look at what other institutions are doing. This webinar, and that it was opened up to non-members. I definitely hope, and there are other, we'll talk about that in just a second, other things that are on the horizon for staying connected here. When saying, would a collective request led by IPMI for federal financial aid be something possible, helpful? Keeping an inventory of campuses, let's see, which campuses are doing what, it would be on a Google spreadsheet. So so there's quite a bit here. Parking enforcement training options. So there's a lot here in ideas that IPMI could take a part in and further. So thank you all for sharing your ideas, and I know IPMI staff and the board continues to be interested in any ideas that you might have about how they can adjust and provide more services to our family.
All right. Thank you very much to everyone who participated. I want to say thank you to Casey for moderating both this discussion and the discussion before. So this concludes today's Shop Talk. I would like to invite everyone to continue the conversation in the IPMI's forum, and you can access the forum by going to forum.parking-mobility.org. We invite everyone to join us again on March 31st at 12 and at 2 p.m. for our next COVID-specific Shop Talk moderated by Kim Jackson. Today's Shop Talk is copyrighted into 2020 by the International Parking and Mobility Institute with all rights reserved. You may now disconnect. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe.